Being 4 o'clock, I will call the Marathon County Executive Committee to order, please. I would ask that the chair of the HR Finance call the HR Finance Committee to order.
We'll call the Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee to order. We have a quorum present. Right, all members are present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now moving on to public comment. We've had 8 people that have signed up and requested to speak. The public comment period is to be 15 minutes or the discretion of the chair. In this case, I will allocate 2 minutes to each individual, and they will have 2 minutes to address the joint committees today on any item they wish to speak. So we'll start with number 1. We have Bruce Grau, 1115 North 10th Street, Wausau, Wisconsin. And Bruce, you have 2 minutes, please.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak. The first week my wife and I were here in Wausau over 5 years ago, we quickly remarked how much of a city feel Wausau had. On our third day, we ventured downtown to check out the 400 block and made a point of exploring an antique store that caught our eye. We easily started a conversation with the owner. When I mentioned how pleasantly surprised we were with this city vibe that Wausau gave us, she replied with a lament, stating, "I don't like it. Now the blacks are coming. They don't want to work. They walk up and down the streets, talking on their cell phones all day." Well, we left the store immediately, vowing never to return. 3 years later, we became grandparents for the first time of a beautiful, bright, and loving little boy. He's a product of a mixed racial union. My wife showed a photo of him to a fellow social worker who reacted with relief that he's okay, he's not too black. Fast forward to May 2021, the County Board Executive Committee is listening to public comments on the Community for All resolution. Opponent after opponent declared no prejudice exists here. When a transgender woman rose to speak, someone in the audience softly uttered, "This ought to be good." Several others responded with a muffled chuckle. These examples underscore the findings of the last Marathon County Life Report that prejudice exists. The perpetrators of these statements and behaviors range from unknowing to organized, conscious complicity, discounting others' life experiences and opposing efforts to eliminate poverty and discrimination. Such divisive behaviors and attitudes allow for costly systemic inequality to persist. The fight should be against inequality and poverty and division, not the poor and the underrepresented.
20 seconds.
Declare that you will purposefully consider the impact of all future major policy on those most impacted by systemic inequality and prejudice. Our whole community will only improve by bringing the bottom up. Leaders set examples of desirable behaviors.
Time.
Please lead. Thank you.
Okay, we next have Gene Mask, 277 Old Highway 51, Mosney, Wisconsin, 54488.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. All right, I thank you for the opportunity to do this. I represent District 24 for the county board, and I would like to thank everyone for having the broadband on the agenda today. I listened to the broadband task force meeting and was very impressed with some of the presentations. I would also like to address the fact that our county needs to start dealing with real policy instead of social issues that have no bearing on what we were elected to do. For that reason, I'm very happy to see the agenda today. Another example is that State Highway 153 east of Event is a wreck. I have received multiple complaints from constituents. This is a state highway. The state will only pay the county to mow once. I have so many constituents who have to drive this road every day, twice a day. It will most likely get mowed by the end of this week. However, the weeds have gotten so tall that they're as tall as people's mailboxes. And this is a very narrow road event with hills and curves. The shoulders are not wide as other state and county highways. It is extremely difficult to see at intersections or anticipate deer and turkeys coming into the traffic lane. And even driving less than 55 miles an hour does not ensure you won't hit an animal running into the road. This is a huge safety issue. Human lives are in jeopardy because of this, and we should be thankful that no one has had a serious accident or died
30
because
seconds.
of poor visibility. I've been in conversation with Jim Griesbach and Ms. Wisner from the DOT about this, and I learned that the state will only pay for one mowing. This is unacceptable. People's lives are at stake here. Right now, 3 of our 7 mowers are down, and Highway 153 should have been mowed earlier this year. Safety concerns are an issue here. Thank you.
Thank you. We next have Latanya Campbell.
Want me to begin?
Whatever, go ahead.
Thank you for your time this evening, and thank you for your service. The goal of Marathon County is to become the healthiest, safest, and most prosperous county in Wisconsin. I, too, have this hope for our community. I am a part of the Diversity Affairs Commission, and we were tasked with ensuring Marathon County is an open, inclusive, and diverse place to live and work, and to achieve racial and ethnic equity, to foster cultural competency, and understanding, and advocate for minority populations throughout the county. The Community for All resolution is a product of that charge. A part of our community is saying they do not feel safe, accepted, valued, and welcome. People who identify as differently abled, seniors, LGBTQ, people of color and women, and lower socioeconomics, voices tend to not be heard. I am speaking up and out for them and saying we as a community leaders have the duty to do better, even when it's hard and not the status quo. The Community for All resolution is feedback. It's a grade. It highlights areas we can do better. The first step is awareness, then acknowledgement. The resolution makes you aware. By signing, you acknowledge, and it allows for a necessary conversation to enact change where everyone feels safe, valued, accepted, welcome, and heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Kreya Tomczyk.
Hi, it's actually Kira Tomczak, but thank you. I'm here to speak in favor of the Community for All resolution, even though it's not on the agenda. I'm originally from Green Bay, but moved to Wausau a couple years ago. At first, I was nervous about moving to central Wisconsin because I wasn't sure about how a smaller area would take to me being Native American, queer, and transgender. I felt like a fish out of water being the only Indigenous person that I knew here, and then I heard about how Marathon County was voting on making Pride Month June, and there was a lot of backlash against that, and that was not very welcoming to a new LGBTQ person to Marathon County. So I'm here to speak about the Community for All resolution. You may not see these issues in your daily lives because you may not be a person of color or LGBTQ or disabled or any of these other minority groups that get faced with discrimination daily. But I can say that when we were protesting last year, cars driving by would yell horrendous slurs at us. They would flip us off. We had drivers throw food and water at protesters. We had drivers harass us and yell at us. And some people were so unsafe that they didn't feel like they could go to their cars afterwards, that they didn't want to be alone because we weren't sure if people were waiting around. I've also witnessed residents of the area message my diverse friends over social media and bully them about their identities and beliefs.
30 seconds.
And drivers have yelled slurs at us for having bumper stickers. So I'm just asking that you take our opinions and beliefs into consideration about how Marathon County is not as hunky-dory as you might think it is. If you think that Marathon County is welcoming and accepting already, then this resolution shouldn't be a big deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jackson Seeger.
Hello, thank you for your time today, and thank you for your service as well. So I stand here today as a transgender man, as a queer man, as a marginalized constituent, and as Marathon County's future. I stand here in favor of the Community for All resolution, and I'm sure you guys have heard it all before, but if you reject this resolution, our community will suffer more than it already has. If you vote against this resolution, it just comes to prove that you are not a leader and you don't deserve your position on the county board. This isn't the first time I've spoken on this resolution, therefore I don't have much to say that hasn't already been said, except for the fact that we are tired. People of color, the LGBT plus community, disabled people, women, we are tired of fighting for our safety, security, and sense of belonging in this community. Constantly being expected to show up and speak on our experiences and traumas time and time again to what? Prove that we belong here? To prove that we are human and we have feelings? To prove that our safety matters just as much as anyone else? It may appear to some of you that this resolution, if passed, won't do much, and that's fine. However, in a community so riddled by bigotry, passing this resolution is everything to our marginalized communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Christine Salem.
Hi, it's Psalm, like in the Bible without the P.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. Whether this governing body votes to support Community for All, or whether, either way, you're going to send a powerful message. Voting down this resolution confirms that the data and the people from marginalized communities confirms what they've already told you, that Marathon County has some work to do to be more inclusive and welcoming, but that the governing body, the Marathon County Board, doesn't recognize inclusion and growth as a priority. Passing the resolution shows we have informed leaders who recognize the importance of sending a message to the people who live here and to the people who may move here, that we are inclusive, welcoming, and that a strong local economy is essential for growth. This isn't hard. As leaders, it's easy to stand with a crowd, but it takes courage to stand alone and do what's right. Please pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Patrick Bacher.
Thank you. It is Bacher. You got it right. Thank you, Chair Gibbs, for the opportunity to address the board tonight. I realize a vote won't happen tonight, but I'm hopeful that a vote for the Community for All will happen soon. It's great to see the support for a Community for All here tonight at the courthouse and across Wausau and Marathon County. This is a display of the very spirit of what makes Marathon County strong and inclusive. A community for all will cultivate an environment where cultural diversity can flourish and build bridges and dialogue instead of walls and division. The Community for All resolution is gaining support and momentum throughout Wausau and Marathon County. Residents are posting CFA signs in their yards and businesses. Community agencies and faith-based organizations are writing letters of support to local media outlets. Channel 7 and 9 have had stories about the positivity of a community for all. Your constituents are talking about the value of encouraging a safe and welcoming environment here in Marathon County. Voting in favor of CFA is your opportunity to show your community that you are listening and that you know how to lead with strength and compassion. This isn't difficult. It will bring our entire community together, and it's the right thing to do. I'm hopeful that you value the message of a community for all. When the time comes and you address the work of the Diversity Affairs Commission and truly hear the passion of your
30
constituents,
seconds.
I'm hoping that you vote in favor of passing the resolution. Marathon County is a community for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Amy Lenov.
Hi, thanks for your time. So I am also here tonight to speak in support of Community for All. Like so many people in our county, I was truly dismayed when the executive committee failed to advance this resolution to the full board in May. We have people in our community who are targeted and victimized simply because they are gay, transgender, Black, Hmong, Mexican, or in some other way a minority or vulnerable population. The resolution is a very simple way of recognizing this discrimination and committing to change as a county governing body. This should not be in any way controversial. That it is highlights the need for change. I ask that you lead the way by passing this resolution. Equity is a minimum standard, but it is a starting point. Please support this resolution when the issue comes up for a vote.
Thank you. And thank all of the speakers for providing their comment. We will now move on to agenda item number 3, approval of the June 10th, 2021 Executive Committee meeting minutes. What is your pleasure? Motion by Vice Chair McEwen and second by Supervisor Robinson. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. We will move on to policy issue 4, discussion and possible action. Education presentations and committee discussion. Update on the filing of District 2000, filling the District 17 vacancy and the Executive Committee vacancy. So just everyone is clear on the 2 committees and those that are listening. There was a vacancy that was generated in District 17 by the supervisor who tendered his resignation. Our board rules call for the solicitation of individuals of interest. 3 people have expressed interest and provided a letter expressing that interest and provided, in some cases, a resume. The board rules require that the chair and the vice chair provide and do an interview of those individuals. Those interviews are scheduled, and we will then bring forward to the full board for its consideration the individual candidate of those 3. And then also, as far as the vacancy on the executive committee, that will be up for vote after the appointment of the approval of the person that is going to fill the vacancy in District 17. So that will be also a paper ballot, so everybody is aware how that process works. It's a paper ballot by this board. So the nominations are accepted, and then we have a ballot, and there will be an election of that individual to the executive committee. So any questions by the committee? Okay. We have item number 5B, broadband presentation by Bug Tussle Wireless. And before we go there, we are so honored to have Steve Schneider from Bug Tussle with us today. Who's going to give a presentation on their proposal, but I would ask that the chair of the Broadband Task Force give us a little bit of an update on where we're at from the various policies that we're looking at as far as expanding broadband in this county.
So thank you, Chair Gibbs. The county's been struggling with trying to expand broadband access to rural parts of the county for 12, 13 years. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of progress to show for that. In 2009, Everett and Associates completed a broadband gap analysis that identified critical issues relating to servicing parts of the county and where the gaps were. And at that time, the recommendation was we thought that there was a great deal of promise with the Frontier Communications involvement in the CAF2 program. And the thought was that there would be expansion in those areas. There wasn't a lot that came out of that. I think there were 8,000 some odd homes that received service. In 2015, the county created a connectivity task force that made recommendations that we partner with internet service providers and others to expand services. Not much happened with that. In 2018, we began a process led by the Extension Education Economic Development Committee and the Infrastructure Committee to identify needs and a path forward and define how or what we wanted to do and how we were going to do it. That led to the retaining of Design 9 that developed a report that had a fiber ring around the county with a number of towers at a cost of $30+ million. After we received that report, we met with the internet service providers in the county and asked them, if we built the system, would you lease the fiber from us? We heard a resounding no. So it didn't make sense to make that investment. Since then, we've created the Broadband Task Force. We have done some things to increase the county's connectivity through the Community Area Network, which connects schools, government, and healthcare, but that's a limited value. We've done a number of other things, but we're excited now with the unfortunately, the pandemic drove home the critical need of broadband for telehealth, telework, virtual education, communication among family members, and the importance of getting a reliable source. So this year in the budget, we put $250,000 aside in the capital improvement plan for broadband expansion. We supported a number of projects last round with the Public Service Commission, including one with Bug Tussle and Northwoods Connect and Wittenberg-Tell. The Wittenberg-Tell proposal was funded through the Public Service Commission, and we have committed about $72,000 of that, $250,000, so we have the remainder available. The Public Service Commission and the governor announced in early June that there would be another round of grants using the American Recovery Plan Act dollars, $100 million. Last year when we applied, there was $24 million available. This year's budget contains an additional $150 million over the next 2 years, so there are a lot of opportunities for us to expand. But the committee or the task force or representatives of the task force sat down with the internet service providers on June 14th to outline what the county wanted to do or the opportunities to partner. State law does not allow us to construct those systems. We cannot provide the last mile or the connection to the home. We can provide middle mile and we can work with others, but we can't provide that service under current state statutes. So we've been trying to identify potential partnerships. We received a number of proposals, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. One of those proposals that is on the agenda today is one from Bug Tussle, and we've been working with Bug Tussle since last fall on an unsuccessful application, and they've continued to show interest in the county. And with that, I'll turn it over to Steve. Would you like to come up front?
Why don't you come up here, Steve? You can show her. We're just now sharing the PowerPoint to the WebEx so that anybody that is joined via WebEx will have the same PowerPoint presentation. So Steve, thank you again for taking time out of your very hectic days at least, while the grant cycle is you know, the deadline for the grant cycle is fast approaching, but we welcome you and look forward to the presentation and potentially working with you on a potential joint grant application.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just figuring out how to advance the slides here, but just a little bit of background about Bug Tussle, in case you're wondering who we are. You may not have heard of us before. We haven't been in this area. We really got involved in this area with a reach out from Wood County, and we're working with a couple of other adjacent counties at this point, but Marathon County, I think, is not only an important area to get broadband, but I think it's also an important leader for the region. So we're extremely interested in Marathon County because it impacts, I think, our ability to be successful in some adjacent areas as well. We are wholly owned by Hilbert Communications, which is a company I started primarily because I couldn't get broadband on my farm and I was irritated, and so I built my own tower. And then the rest of the town, all my high school friends wanted service too, so I built another tower, and it just kept expanding. I had some background in the industry. I had been the VP GM of Cellcom for about 11 years on the front end of my career, going back 20 years. So knew a little bit about towers, and knew a little bit about cellular, and knew a bit about broadband. Just in case you're wondering who we are, 80% of the company is controlled by three of us: myself, Paul Gale, who just had his 93rd birthday. Paul was one of the principals of Lunda Construction for many years, and started out as a local farmer in Hilbert, as did my family start out in Hilbert. So hence the name Hilbert Communications. Bug Tussle, by the way, is where the Clampetts came from on the Beverly Hillbillies. So we focus on those rural, way out areas. And the last one is Bob Eddy, who is an individual who had a phone company, was very successful in the cellular industry in Big Lake, Minnesota, and St. Cloud, Minnesota, ran a switching operation that we shared for a number of years, and sort of shares our values and ideals for rural America. We started in 2003, 18 years ago. We chugged along at 500,000 in revenue. For the first 5 years, I was a one-person show, making about 100,000 a year doing consulting. And then we got a break with AT&T, and AT&T asked us to build Door County for them in a 6-month period. We did that successfully, so they gave us other towers, and today AT&T is one of our largest customers, and we're negotiating a fairly large-scale project with them. We last year in 2019, just to give you an idea of what the pandemic did to people who were positioned for rural markets, 2019 we had about 28 million of revenue, most of which came from our tower construction and tower operations and roaming for AT&T. Our revenue more than doubled to 64 million last year in 1 year. We had a net income of about 2.8 million in 2019. That went up significantly. However, this is a very capital-intensive market, so 19 million of growth capital from income goes really quickly when you look at just putting a middle mile fiber into Marathon County, costing about 12 million. We're engaged right now with 18 different counties in similar discussions. 2 of them we have had a partnership with since 2012, Fond du Lac and Adams. We have had a long-standing relationship with Waushara County, and that started by just, we'd build 3 towers, they'd build 3 towers for their emergency communications, and then we'd both be able to use them, and in one fiscal year, it saved them about $1.3 million that they would have otherwise had to spend. So they're one of the counties that I think is going to be voting fairly soon on a similar proposal to what we're doing here, or proposing here. We have a couple of sister companies that make us sort of unique. Red Tail Tower, we build our own towers because that allows us to do it at a lower cost and more timely. So particularly in this environment where it's difficult finding people to work and it's difficult finding contractors, we don't have to worry about that because we can build our own towers first. And if we have any excess capacity, we'll provide that to other carriers. We also are doing our own fiber construction. We're ramping that up. A lot of our crews, we hired tower climbers that also knew fiber optics and have been leveraging that. Midwest Data Corps, we have our own switching and routing center in Madison. I point that out because it's very important to what we're going to talk about in a minute, because we have a peering center in Madison where we direct connect to Netflix and Hulu and University of Wisconsin and TDS and quite a 27 total providers. So 80% of our internet traffic that starts on our network gets handed off before it goes to the public internet, which means when there's blockage in the public internet, our traffic still gets through directly. It lowers latency, so you don't have some of the log jams if you're watching a Netflix film or something that you may have with providers that don't have that type of direct connectivity. We are the 14th largest holder of spectrum, which is FCC licenses. We have a big chunk of the Midwest that we've bought, but only rural markets. So we don't have your Green Bays, we don't have your Wausau's, because those were bigger markets than what we were interested in. But we've accumulated a lot in the UP, rural Wisconsin, rural Minnesota, the whole state of South Dakota, upstate Michigan. So that's that company. And then Cloud One Services, where we do our own site acquisition. I can tell already I'm going to have to speed it up here and probably summarize a little more. We've got some really good employees, and that's all I'll say about that. They do an excellent job. Yeah, would you try? Thank you. Just a quick high-level overview. Our objectives. And the first objective is that we want to provide at least 25 megabits per second for virtually everyone now. Now, that's a little bit in conflict with your broadband committee when we first sat down, because their goal is 50 megabits per second. Our rationale behind 25 megabits per second is that video streams at 5 megabits per second. And if you have the ability to do 5 video streams in your home, generally that covers most homes. We know that there's people that need 50 or more to send MRI scans or to do artificial intelligence or access supercomputers in another state. We have upgraded, what we're doing in general, but our rate plans are still driven off of 25 megabits per second. And the other thing is access is important, and there's many studies, and the state has this in their information. There's 2 important things. One is access to broadband, and the second is affordability. And the second may be more important than the first, because it really doesn't matter if you have access if you can't afford it. So our 25 megabits per second, we guarantee that we're charging no more than $50 for that we put into our programs with communities. Now, if we're going into an area that, we're not getting any public support from and we're just going in there commercially, we may charge more in those areas. Our rate cards show a bit more, but we commit $50 to the communities, and so that would be part of our contract with Marathon County, is that for everyone in the county for a period of time, probably initially 5 years, that we would charge no more than $50 for a 25 meg plan. Our application to the Public Service Commission is going to include equipment that can provide 100 megabits per second. We have quite a number of people on our network that buy 100 megabits per second. The average speed that they actually use is 18. We understand why the Public Service Commission is pushing for 100. We think that our 25 strategy is equally important, but the equipment that we're using is something called a Cambium 450M Medusa, which puts out about 350 to 400. They say it puts out 450 megabits per second per sector, but that's in a lab, and we're not in a lab in rural Marathon County. So we're finding 350 to 400, which means that on a tower with 4 sectors, which is our normal configuration, we could start with a 2-to-1 oversubscription, meaning 1 out of 2 people is using it at full capacity all of the time. We could start out with about 32 users per tower. Our average in rural markets is about 120 once it's developed. 80 initially is what we aim to get in terms of subscriptions. So our second objective is get 100 meg capability out there now, but we're probably not going to put that in our advertising. We're probably going to be pushing the 25 meg, and we'll probably be pushing a 60 meg. And then if somebody needs 100 meg, we would do a contract. Because we would add a separate radio just for them on the tower. Our services, we do not do contracts locking you in unless it's something where we have to do special equipment. So it's month to month. It's worked out very well for us because generally people are happy with our service. If they're happy with your service, you don't have to lock them into a contract to keep them. The last thing is 1+ gigabit per second service in the midterm. And again, we think that it's going to get there where we need that, and we would like to start working on that, and we'd like to start working on it now by putting in a ring around the county that frankly avoids Highway 29 because there's already all kinds of fiber running along Highway 29. It's just whether you can access it or not. And we think sooner or later, if you have competition above and below 29, people will allow it to be accessed. So we are looking at about 2,000 residences on the route that we're proposing that would get 1 gigabit service day one. We're going to work on meandering that around to try to pick up more than 2,000 residences with that. Sometimes if you go up or down a road, you can pick up more homes on this road versus that road. So we're working on that design yet, but the initial that we're probably going to submit to the Public Service Commission is somewhere around 2,000 homes served today. By the way, we believe that there are about 18,000 homes in Marathon County that do not have 25 megabit service today. They may have 5 megabit and they're okay with that, but we believe that of the 55,466 households, about 26,896 are served by existing providers. There's another 9,700 that are allocated for RDOF, which is an area that we can't apply for. we can build there and get there ahead of the RDOF provider if we so desire, but the RDOF providers are going to get, I believe it's about $8 million in this county to build those areas, so they're probably going to build them sooner or later. So we sort of, it's risky to go there. We're hoping that our mid-mile fiber ring will incent them to move faster, and I think that they probably will, because they could connect into a live fiber and build out sooner, and build out specific areas instead of having to build out from, say, Wausau or out from a particular area where they're providing service. The next item is that we provide an open network for all providers. So if our competitors, Country Wireless, Northwoods Connect, who, for full disclosure, we're working with really very closely with them, but other providers in the county, Charter, TDS, whoever would like to use our fiber, I mean, we're going to charge them for using it at a reasonable rate. But unlike a lot of providers where if you ask them where their fiber is, they won't show a map, particularly in a public meeting like this. I have no problem putting our map out there to whoever wants to see it, because it's important to be able to access it, because I believe we're going to actually get it done. The next stuff is, using broadband for increasing standards of living and economic development. I know one of the, speakers from the public made a statement I jotted down: strong local economy is essential for growth, and I agree with that 100%, as is a strong broadband network essential for economic growth. Not having it doesn't guarantee you'll have economic growth. Not having it guarantees you won't have economic growth. The second last thing on here, no cost to local government with significant returns to the public. That's something that I think we're fairly unique in what we're doing, in that we're asking for the county to consider using their unutilized general obligation bond capacity to write a backdrop guarantee for a bond that we would issue. And the county would guarantee replenishment of the debt service fund for that bond. And if, so I don't want to, put any mistruths out there. The county is on the hook with the guarantee, but they're on the hook month by month as we make it. All of the assets we have in the county would be collateral for that, as would a guarantee by our company for the whole thing. And that is what we did with Fond du Lac and Adams County back in 2012, is when we developed the model. It was very controversial at the time. We never missed a payment. The ratings on the bonds moved up from BB to AA1 today, and it's worked out quite well. We also pay the county 40 basis points to use that unutilized portion of your general obligation bonding capability. That 40 basis points would result in payments to Marathon County from us of about $1.2 million over the term of the bond. So not only are you not taking money out of your general fund to do things with us, we are actually providing you a revenue source. And again, I know that some of your leadership has talked to Fond du Lac County. I think it's worked out very well for them, and they've done a couple of different types of these bonds. So my last item is there's nominal risk to local government. Is there risk? There is risk when I drove over here, when some crazy driver almost hit me just weaving in and out of traffic. There is perhaps less risk on this because all of the assets, and I can tell you that towers, once they're in the air, are worth twice as much as it took to put them in the air. Most of the towers we build in this county would have another carrier on them, probably AT&T, maybe a third carrier. So the value of the towers alone should cover the bonds, plus the value of the fiber, plus you would have to, take all of the assets that Hilbert Communication has via their guarantee. So, is there risk? Yes. Do we think it's well collateralized? We do. This is just a map that we have up on the screen showing where we propose to put that fiber ring. There's somewhere between 200 and 215 miles of fiber. We would also provide fiber to the home along that route. And so when I talk about picking up more homes by meandering that around, we may add a mile or two by meandering up or down a road or two. And then we would potentially, with our own funds, also branch off from that. We hope that the RDOF providers would branch off from that. We hope that some of your local providers who might be doing fixed wireless today consider getting into fiber and pick some areas and use this fiber to maybe branch beyond fixed wireless. And I think that that is a good economic development thing for those providers that are already here as well. We can move forward. This map shows where we would get coverage from the fixed wireless, and largely this is based on, I don't like the way we did this, but we're forced to do it this way by regulation, because what we had to do was take where there's RDOF people, and we couldn't put a tower where there's an RDOF provider, because then it gets automatically cut out of consideration for the state grant. We had to put it in an area that the state in a separate map created, which does not coincide with the RDOF map, saying that it has to be in this area if it's considered for a grant. And then on top of that, there's other requirements that we need to meet, such as Section 106. So if it's an area where there's a potential for Native American remains, we need to stay, approximately 2 miles from those sites. So these sites were selected to create success with the grants. They also were created to optimize the coverage in uncovered areas. And you'll see some holes in there where we believe Country Wireless has a network and that we may be able to help them, increase, or maybe they want to get into some fiber by connecting onto the ring, as well as other providers in those markets. But we identified the northeast corner and the northwest corners as really in need of services. There's some areas where Serenity is moving up, and I like the Serenity folks a lot. I'm glad you guys are doing things with them, and Serenity is part of the 20% that the three of us don't own in our company, so they actually have an ownership stake in our company. So, I think that they are good folks to work with and are, have fixed the south, are slowly fixing the south east corner of the county, but there's a tier in between there before you get to where TDS may be doing some things with fiber around Mosinee that is unserved. There's some areas coming out of Marshfield that are terribly served, and we're building Marshfield. We would actually connect fiber up from Marshfield towards Stratford, and we would be connecting fiber up south of by 153 and 49, but coming over where the towers are in that segment. So this just gives you an idea of where the fixed wireless would be. The fiber runs by most of these, or we have in the budget 2 gigabit per second capacity to connect those on the inner side to the outer ring on towers that would be built. Next slide. This is sort of a repeat. This just shows you the difficulty. So this is the red areas where we had to be in, where the Public Service Commission has identified weaknesses, but it doesn't include the RDOF, because when I put 4 layers, one on top of the other, you couldn't see anything. So, just gives you an idea of what we're covering, because we cover most of the red area in Marathon County. Now, this extends beyond the county border, so you can see all the counties around you right up against your edges also have red areas, which means just over the boundary, there isn't good service either. So this is just a quick little graph indicating that we would cover a population of about 35,000 people with the fixed wireless and a population of about 11,200 with the fiber to the home and adjacencies. So those would be communities that we go through that we're not taking fiber to the home, but somebody else could add on, or we could add on. They're concentrated areas of homes that wouldn't qualify for the rural broadband grant, but that if there's fiber connecting them, someone will build it or we will build it. We cover 53.5% of the land area of Marathon County with either the fiber or the fixed broadband. Next, yep, I'm good. We're looking at about 198, and I'm going to say 200 to 215 miles before everything is said and done of middle mile fiber. We would pass about 1,189 residences directly, and then there's about another 3,478 that would be in concentrated areas within 2,000 feet of the middle mile fiber that someone else could serve or we could serve. The coverage with the 100 megabits per second wireless would be about 36,000 people. It's tough to get the residential. You can get it by township, and you can get it by census tract, but you can't get that granular. We can get population granular. So we backed into the number of residences there by taking the county average household is 2.41, taking the number of people served, dividing it by 2.41 to come up with the 14,946. We're going to try to get a little more firm number before we submit the grant application. Next. I think I already hit the strategy, so I may have done a lot of talking up front that'll make this stuff go really quick. We deploy the fixed wireless broadband immediately. We deploy the middle mile. We're deploying middle mile that can do 200 gigabits per second, and with software upgrades, the equipment can go up to 800 gigabits per second. So that's for the long haul. We use something called GPON, which is a little over a gigabit per second to the home. We don't have to turn all that up. We add software keys so we can sell 100 meg or 50 meg or 200 meg. And you'll see a lot of the providers today are selling 100 or 200 meg, because if you open it up, you consume capacity on the network that no one's ever using. And so you want to, scale it appropriately. And we provide open access to all providers that want to come forward. Next. Our value added is, I think we are going to move faster than our competitors. Some of the competitors, as the chair of your broadband, John pointed out, may have had 12 or 13 years already of wanting them here and haven't moved on it. Others have been here 100 years and haven't moved on it. And so I think we move quite quickly, even if there's limitations on contractors. We've been stockpiling fiber, knowing that there's going to be a shortage of fiber coming up here. Right now, our biggest issue is a shortage of chipsets in the electronics that are slowing down shipments of electronics. We also do something called Bug Tussle University, which is my quirky little thing, because what I find is people don't really even know what broadband is. And there's a lot of things that you can do with broadband, and just putting the fiber into a community doesn't do anything if you don't know what to do with it. So, we started out in rural markets teaching, senior citizens how to use a computer, how to use a mouse. I need lessons on how to use a mouse still. And those classes went over very well. They were always filled up. It's something free we just provided. And what we found is we provided those classes, and about 3/4 of the people that went to the class then subscribed to our service because they know what to do with it. We've started partnering with colleges and tech schools. We've been partnering with some of the CISA districts. We just hired the former principal in Pittsville, who's a PhD, to run our Bug Tussle University program. So she's going to be actually developing a formal curriculum and doing teacher training for us on artificial intelligence, virtual reality, telehealth, agri-tech, Internet of Things, how you use devices, smart homes. Someday we'd like to do something on smart cities. And we've got a number of people studying how we integrate smaller cities into a smart city concept. We're probably going to do a little trial in Green Bay on some automated parking where you just put a sensor on your vehicle, and just like the interstate toll booths, if you're parked in that spot for that long, it just comes off your credit card and you don't have to plug things in or go to an app or anything. You just drive up, drive away, and it's really there's a couple cities we've studied that have done that, and the amount of increased revenue is phenomenal. It's not, and it decreased cost over the short term even, because you have 100% compliance for all intents and purposes, because you also have monitors that'll determine if somebody who doesn't have one is there. And so you can, use a much more targeted approach to finding people, because it'll just map for you where to go next, and it'll figure out concentrations where there's groups that don't have a pass parked. And, your meter doesn't run out and you don't get a ticket because your meter is always on, because it's whenever you drive in and then drive away. So it's interesting. Our AT&T relationship, I don't talk about it a lot, but we would also be bettering the cellular network here. There's a lot of people that believe cellular and broadband are one and the same. They may at some point be, and some people try to use cellular for broadband, but a lot of people want better cellular service as well. And again, we open it up to all comers. T-Mobile uses our network, AT&T uses our network extensively. We cover probably close to half of the rural Wisconsin for AT&T. We have 454 towers that we operate that AT&T is on. We have about 40 some that T-Mobile is on. I think Cellcom eventually may look at some of ours. US Cellular tends to do their own thing. And then the other value added is that we pay you that 40 basis points on the guaranteed bonds, which, like I said, is about $1.2 million. We have a lot of counties right now asking us, well, if we want to take ARPA money and instead of issuing a bond, issue a smaller bond, and then we have money we would loan directly to you under the same terms and conditions. I don't care how we slice it or dice it. We put the budget together. We have a target cost of money that we can afford in rural markets, and UBS is our underwriter on the bonds, and so they've determined about 3.35%. They're taxable bonds. The difference between taxable and non-taxable right now is negligible. So we'd rather, the problem with taxable is it has to, or non-taxable, it has to be a real estate project. Some of this is real estate considered and some of it isn't. So, this avoids any issues with the IRS by just making it all taxable. And I don't mention in there the fact that a lot of the services we provide also would be subject to sales tax. And some of the counties that have rolled out additional video services and things, internet isn't subject to sales tax, but cable TV services and video services realized a significant uptick in sales tax revenue when those services got rolled out. We're looking at 18 broadband towers, 200 miles of fiber, a bunch of backhaul electronics, and we're looking to subsidize about 2,000 connections. Again, looking at affordability, so we would have some criteria for who would get a break on installation based on income bracket or children in the home or some criteria, and we would look to the county for direction on how to do that, but we think that that's critical to raising everyone up in the county. So the total project cost that we've put together right now is about $22 million with everything in. Next slide. Looking at where that comes from, we're looking at about 1.8 million from the Public Service Commission grant. This week, we've studied that a little bit and increased it from our initial take just based on what we know applications are coming in and how much money is out there and what we think might be appropriate. We would be putting $1 million of our equity into it. We'd be looking for 19 million of it in a conduit bond. I'm going to round and say close to 20 million. If the county wanted to do some different things with ARPA, we're willing to do that. I think the benefit that some counties are looking at is if you give us ARPA money and we invest it today, it meets the requirements, and then we can do something to compensate for rights of way on this fiber and future fiber that would be payable back over the future. And again, we're open to any and all of that. It makes sense for us, and it makes sense for what I call evergreen money for the county, where there's going to be other needs with broadband as things move along. And if we pay you back as we are successful in the county, that money can get reinvested back in and used over and over. The conduit bonds, we are currently in process. Fond du Lac County has informally indicated an interest. They will be taking formal action probably in August. Again, I don't want to predict how supervisors will or won't vote, but it seems like there's pretty significant support there. It's going to committee the first week in August. We've been before the Finance Committee for 3 months now, just going through specifics. But how this works is Fond du Lac County would actually be the issuer. So they would be approving the issuance of up to $240 million in conduit bonds. They issue the bonds, and the minute they're issued, they become bug tussle bonds. We're responsible for paying them. And then by intergovernmental agreement, each of the counties would guarantee their pro rata. So the county isn't actually issuing the bonds. Now, you are using your general obligation, your unused portion. So if you have 100 million in debt today and your limit is 200 million, that 100 million in between there, you're going to use up 20 million of that if it's 20 million, even though you're not issuing it. You still have to do a TEFRA hearing because you are using the good faith and credit of the county by providing that guarantee. It is not a guarantee of the bond, it is a guarantee to replenish the debt service fund. So every month, there's 3 years of interest put aside up front during the construction period, and then there's a year of payments that's held in trust by US Bank in Milwaukee as the trustee. And we're using them because we used them on the 2012 bond offering. They know us, they know we've made every payment. And then every month we make the payments to them, they replenish that fund. So if we miss a payment, the county would get notice that we missed a payment. County doesn't have to do anything. County calls Steve Schneider and says, what the heck's going on? We want to meet with you. Why did you miss this payment? Now, I've never had that happen. I never want it to happen. I don't hope it never would happen. But that's what would happen if it did. And at that point in time, there's 11 more payments set aside. If the debt service fund is not replenished, then the county would be responsible for replenishing that. At that point in time, they would take all of our assets in the county. They would take all of our assets as a company, and I would move to a poor farm. Bug tussle is the target of the conduit, as I mentioned. Marathon County provides a guarantee. The bonds include, I covered all of that. Marathon County receives the 40 basis points. We also are providing you 24 fibers in the fiber that we deploy with this for your own use. So, and we are anticipating taking this past your E911 towers. There is a restriction that would be on that by contract that the county could not compete with us. Now, by law, you can't compete with us anyway unless you have a referendum. But you could contractually do something, and we don't want the county to take the things that we gave them for free that we're paying them back for in the bond to compete with us. But we do want you to be able to utilize those if at some point in time you need those for, there's a number of uses. The most, important one that comes to mind is the emergency communications from your towers. We have one county that is working with us where they're taking their emergency communications out because we're going to do those for them as part of it. And they're putting in cameras so that they can have cameras on all our towers so that their highway department can monitor road condition in the winter to know where to start snow plowing, where the roads are the worst, if there's a traffic accident, things like that. So, I think over time, you're going to find that there's a lot of uses for those 24 fiber. We're also giving you a space on the tower to use. So if you need additional space, I think that's where our discussion maybe started originally, was with Jerry on an area that you needed additional tower space where we were building a tower. Now, instead of paying us for that tower space, you would get free space as part of this. And I don't want to sound like a used car salesperson, but there are a lot of good benefits to this. Next. Well, I guess that's sort of the end of my presentation. So I'd open it up for questions.
Questions by the committee members? A lot to digest. People such as the chair of the Broadband Task Force, myself, Sarah, we have been involved in discussions. I've been involved in the broadband expansion going back almost 13 years and trying to improve broadband in this county. So I do understand the whole opportunities, but questions by this committee?
I'd just like to make a couple of observations. And the Broadband Task Force has been looking at trying to define what the county's role is in broadband services. And we, at the last meeting, brought in Scott Feld, who's a county administrator from Kewaunee County. And Kewaunee County went out for proposals to a number of providers and who they would partner with, but they also wanted to create a level playing field. So they're not doing subsidies of providers, but rather they're engaging bug tussle through the loan program. And they would make that available to other companies in an effort to create that level playing field. We're intrigued by that, and we'll be spending some time looking at that going forward. But this is a step in that direction. And I think when you look at what the Public Service Commission is doing, this round is different than previous rounds. It's got the 100 up and down to reduce the latency. What this project does, unlike, well, the others, fiber to the home, has addressed that directly, but the fixed wireless with the fiber connecting the towers increases the strength both in terms of the megabits down, but the megabits up, and that reduces the latency. The problem of engaging in the telework and WebEx meetings. So this is a strong proposal, and while it doesn't literally meet the requirements, I think it goes a long way in addressing the critical needs in the county. We've identified that it will cost in excess of $200 million to bring fiber to the home, to every home in the county. We just simply don't have that money, and I don't think the economics are there to do that. So this lets us move down in that direction. So we thank Steve for his interest.
Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Butke.
Just wondering about the 40 basis points on the outstanding balance, approximately 1.2 billion. Is that over million? Is that over a 4-year period, or how much? How do we?
Over the term of the loan, or term of the note.
In the term of the note is that a 4-year or 3-year?
It's a 30-year loan.
Okay, that's not. So the 1.2 million is over that 30-year period, okay.
So, you know, the higher amounts are in the earlier years. The other thing we've indicated is that if you.
Steve, because we're recording this, if you could come up to a microphone.
Sure.
The other thing is that if you wanted, we would net present value that and do it up front. Now, every county we've talked to about that has said no, because it's a lot less money, but also it doesn't tie the program together as well, and there's some tax ramifications, and you have a short-term big windfall, and, you know, so, but, you know, we're flexible on that. You know, and Fond du Lac gets 10 basis points for being the issuer as well, and they already voted to not do the upfront. They haven't approved the whole thing yet, but they've been, that's one of the things that's taken some time to just work through. Good question.
Other questions? Supervisor Zhang?
Thank you. Testing. It should turn green. It's holding down. Thought it turned off. Testing. It's green. Try now. Testing. 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 I don't think you like it. That one sounds like it's on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess this is a lot of information to digest here, but I guess I just wanted a clarification here. What we're really looking for, so what the county's commitment would be is just to guarantee that we would be replenishing that service, for that debt service, which is in the amount of $19 million. Am I understanding that? Am I understanding that correct?
Well, the debt service is a payment per month, and so we would be replenishing the shortfall on a monthly basis once the debt service reserve fund, if you'll call it something, falls below a required level. But it ultimately is agreeing, or the county is agreeing to pledge its credit to service the $19 million of debt.
So it's not where we're actually putting up $19 million right away here. It just, okay. Just wanted that clarified. Thank you.
For clarification, what we're seeking today, later in the agenda, is just support for advancing the county's support for Bug Tussle's application. Understanding that there will be several times in the future where we will need to take county board action. We're not binding the county board, but we wanted to make sure that before we got behind and endorsed a plan, that there was a level of understanding, and if there were some serious concerns or objections, we wanted to get those out early. So what we're committing to today is to basically move down that path. There's no guarantee that the Public Service Commission would fund this. If they do not, I know that we will engage Bug Tussle in discussions on doing it with or without PSC funding, just given our past discussions, as well as other internet service providers in that level playing field. But what we're looking for today is sort of a comfort level with the concept, understanding that they go through the review, the submittal of the applications, which are due July 27th. There's a period for objections from other providers. PSC makes a determination based upon their criteria. We then have to, once that's done, enter into a memorandum of agreement with Bug Tussle. We'll have to do the bonding or borrowing authorizations, preliminary and final. And so there will be repeated opportunities for us to vote on that before we're actually committing the county. And as we go through that process, we'll do increasingly due diligence on the guarantees, the conditions, and the terms going forward to try to protect the property or the taxpayer's interest in that process. A similar process that they've done in the past.
And at some point, there will be an intergovernmental agreement that is drafted in, spelling all of that out, and that intergovernmental agreement will obviously have to be brought before the full board for its approval. So, other questions? Supervisor Eddy.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wondering a little bit about the community buy-in part of this. I know that was mentioned a little bit. Will we be incorporating, oh man, my brain is blanking. Will we be incorporating any town hall type meetings to engage the public? Like, what does that component look like, if any, in this whole process? Thank you.
Initially, there's, because of the short deadline, what we're asking for from the board, or in this case, the joint committees, is the support for the application. Once and if it goes further, or there's an award, potential award from the Public Service Commission, then there will be, extensive engagement in the community and information brought out to the residents as to the service. Absolutely.
We've been hearing from the public for years about the need, the critical need. And many of you were here last Friday when Senator Baldwin had the hearing on broadband, and we heard from various segments, education, healthcare, farm community, business community, about the importance of getting the system in place.
Other questions by committee members? Okay, well then we will move on to item number 6, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolution under 6A, broadband expansion efforts 2021 Public Service Commission grant applications. And we have under that county partnership opportunities, 1, Serenity, 2, Bug Tussle, and 3, Country Wireless. And I will turn it over to the chairman of the task force.
Thank you, Kurt. We're going to, we actually had LTD submitted a proposal. LTD is one of the Rural Development Opportunity Fund award, or they're in the process of negotiating an agreement with the Federal Communication System to provide services in portions of the county, primarily in western part of the county. Charter Communication is another one. We know that Charter Communication is working on a grant through the National NTIA later this year, so that they didn't contact us on this grant. But LTD asked us to partner with them on running a fiber line. They didn't meet the basic requirements that we had set up as a task force, so we did not consider their request. We know that there's another company, WIN, that is with Nokomis, that's running fiber from Marathon County up through Lincoln County. They may have served some portions. They didn't meet our deadline. We intend to write a letter of support. They're not asking for any money from the county for that. The ones that we have before you today, again, this was a compressed time frame. Last time we had 6 months, last fall. We have less than 2 months this year. So we're trying to squeeze everything in with new sets of criteria. And so it is an evolving process. What we're looking for the county to do is adopt a resolution in support. We will then forward that resolution to the internet service providers to include in their application. That resolution will be accompanied by a letter from Kurt on behalf of the county board expressing our support for Serenity's proposal. And I misspoke earlier. I said that the last year's grant was $62,000. Last year's was $72,000 from the Capital Improvement Fund. This year's request is $62,900. The Broadband Task Force recommended approval that would result in expansion of the service in the Mayflower Lake and Norrie Lake area in the town of Norrie, an underserved area. We've had good working relationships with them, and they had the 4th highest ranked project last round, and they have been incremental in their expansion on the western, or excuse me, eastern side of the county. So what we'd like to do is have, we can either do individual motions or a collective motion, but when we take it to the county board, we would ask that we have resolutions for each of the internet service providers we're looking to partner with, so that they can include that in their package, which is why we amended the agenda to list them out separately. So again, the Serenity proposal, Tasha, can you pull up that map that was sent to you? Yeah. Gary Hetzer from our CPZ took and overlaid the various locations of the projects earlier today, but. Serenity's looking at serving approximately 100. I know that their numbers, again, are changing as they get into it. Their project cost is, again, fluctuating, but in $275,000, $300,000. They're asking the county for $62,922, and they would match that with the completion of July 1st of next year. And they would be represented in the green polygons on the western side of the county. Or excuse me, eastern side. I keep doing that, eastern side of the county. So would there be a motion to support? And we'll need to take two motions, one from each committee. So we can do HR. Go ahead, Sarah.
There we go. Just one other thing I think we should probably just clarify before we start doing motions on this is, of the three, Serenity and Country Wireless are actually asking for funds out of that $250,000 we put into our budget last year. Bug Tussle is, well, I'm sure they would accept funds. They are working with the loan thing that we just heard about. Of the amount that's remaining, we are the recommendation was that $62,000 goes to Serenity, and the balance goes to Country Wireless. So these two would use up the remaining amount out of our budgeted funds for this year's budget. And so I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on that component of what we're asking out of this recommendation. Also, there's no guarantee that both or either would be approved by PSC. So if only one were to be approved versus only the other, there could be funding left, things like that. But just wanted to make sure we had that clarified.
So is there any additional questions by committee members? What is your pleasure? Again, we would need motions if you're so inclined to support the support that we're providing to each of the potential grant applications and partnering with that grant application. Again, that's what we're committing to. Supervisor Butke.
I will make that motion on behalf of the executive committee.
Okay. Is there a second? It's for all three so you're making the motion for all three?
For all three, right.
And the vice chair is seconding the motion. And
on the motion, if I could. Sure. If I could, we're very dynamic with Country. I just want to give you an overview of the Country Wireless so you understand what we're doing. They actually will have two projects, and that's based upon discussions this afternoon. So they're intending to submit two grant applications. One is called the Southwest Marathon County Proposal and it deals with about 12 and a half miles of fiber serving just under 200 homes. And the second one is the Mariel subdivision in the town of Cleveland. And there's about 2.4 miles of fiber with about 82 homes. They're still refining the number of homes and the amount of fiber, but again, we're tied into this quick turnaround time. They will have schedules. The difference is the Serenity in the southwest Marathon County are fiber to the home with gigabit service. They're all connected fiber to fiber. The Mariel project is a fiber to the home, but it uses a microwave relay, which will reduce the speeds to 120, which is allowed as long as it's scalable up to 100. So just so you understand where we're going with those projects. And again, the bug tussle one, Steve did a great job of providing an overview.
And I'm assuming that implied in that motion will be that each of the resolutions, there would be 3 separate resolutions, and they would be to each of the projects. Okay.
Why don't we vote on yours first?
So is there any further discussion by the executive committee on the motion that is on the floor currently? Any discussion by the executive committee? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion to approve supporting the 3 ISPs in their applications for Public Service Commission grant funding for their 3, in essence, 4 different projects, 3 different providers, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Now for the Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee, what are your wishes? Supervisor Fisher?
I would like to make the motion to, the similar motion on behalf of the HR and Finance Committee to support the support.
All right, is there a second? Second, moved by Fisher, second by Leahy. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. Now, the next steps is Sarah and Tasha have a lot of work to do over the next couple of a few days. We will be looking for letters of support. I know many of you generated those last year. We would look to ye for help with the Hmong community, Tim with the banking community, others as you have that expertise. But we're working on trying to give an overview, project description, and we will be sending that out hopefully tomorrow. We need the letters by next Thursday, so it's a very quick turnaround time. Again, compressed schedule. We need to give it to them. They have to have those loaded in on the PSC's website by the 27th at 4 o'clock. So we will be taking these resolutions to the county board next Thursday at the informational meeting for action, because we can't, the other meeting is too late.
Okay, any other questions? Couple of announcements. Again, our next meeting is scheduled currently for August 12th, 2021 at 4 p.m. For Executive Committee, there potentially, there has been some discussions. The legislation, and just make it brief, that would have delayed redistricting for a 2-year period. That was well, I shouldn't say sponsored. Was backed by WCA, Towns Association, and the League of Municipalities, was vetoed by the governor. And so there is some discussion about how to try to do a compressed timeline to do redistricting. It is going to be challenging. Have had some discussions with our partners in the that will help us be redrawing those maps. So we may have to have at some time an earlier meeting, because again, some of the requirements under the redistricting is that we have to have potentially, well, we have to have under state statute currently 2 Class 3, public hearings, one prior to doing the preliminary map. Then that goes out to the municipalities. They have they look at their maps and provide feedback that comes back to us. We have a second requirement to do a public hearing. So there may be a challenge, and I may have to, so follow your emails, because we may have to draw the executive committee, or in this case, the redistricting committee that this board has already approved the creation of moving forward. With that, any other announcements by the chair of the HR Finance Committee?
No? Any? All right. I'm sorry. All right, is there a motion to adjourn for the HR Finance? Moved by Yee, seconded by Jonathan. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. That motion carries.
And what is the pleasure of the executive committee as far as a motion to adjourn? Motion by Vice Chair McEwen, second by Supervisor Butke, with a motion to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
And we got you out.
Oh yes, as I go onto my